All right, hello everybody and welcome back. We are going to start out today with a pretty simple little math problem. Okay, I'm going to give you 2 times the group 6 plus 3. So 2 times the group 6 plus 3. Now, here's what I want you to notice. This problem says that we want to take the number 2 and we want to multiply that number 2 times the entire group 6 times 3. Now, how do I know that this is 2 times? How do I know that this is multiplication that's being done here? Well, I know that it is because this 2 is right next to these parentheses. So the 2 that I'm seeing right here is right next to the parentheses. There's nothing in between. So that lets me know that that is multiplication. So how could I do this? How could I multiply 2 times that entire group 6 plus 3? Well, one of the things that I could do is use something that we have already reviewed. So I could do this problem using the order of operations. Now, the order of operations says that I would do anything that I see inside of grouping symbols first. So we've already said here that we're doing 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3. So the first thing I would do in this problem, according to the order of operations, is that group 6 plus 3. We know that 6 plus 3 is 9. So this would become 2 times 9. And then 2 times 9 is simply 18. So the answer for this problem, 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, would be 18. Now, what I want to do today is show you an alternative way to do this problem. Another way that we could take this problem and get to the same answer. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to write this problem down again. So notice, exactly the same problem. It's asking me to take the number 2 and multiply it by the entire group 6 plus 3. This second time around, I'm going to do this problem using something called the distributive property. Now that should sound familiar to you. You have done that before. Okay? Distributive property. The distributive property says that I'm going to distribute. And when we distribute things, we give them to everybody in the group. So just for example, if you were sitting here in the classroom with me right now, and I distributed a worksheet that I needed you to do, then I would go around to every member of the group and hand you a worksheet. Okay? What we're going to do here is we're going to take that number 2 that we see outside of the parentheses, and instead of multiplying it by the entire group, what we're going to do is we're going to take that 2 and we are going to distribute him to each member of the group. So instead of doing 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, here's what we're going to do instead. We're going to do 2 times 6, so multiply 2 by that first member of the group, and then we're going to do 2 times 3, multiply 2 by the second member of that group, and then we are going to add the answers together. So this addition sign just moves down. So this is what distributive property says I can do. It says instead of doing 2 times the entire group, I can do 2 times each member of that group. So the 2 distributes. He gets multiplied by each member of the group. All right, now, again here, I would have to use order of operations to finish this problem off. Okay? And so the next thing I would do is I have 2 times 6 plus 2 times 3. So I have multiplications and I have this addition. Well, we know that according to the order of operations, the multiplications would go first. So we would do 2 times 6, which is 12. We would do 2 times 3, which is 6. And then we would add those together. So now we do our addition. 12 plus 6 is 18. And lo and behold, that is the same answer. That is the same answer. So 2 different ways to do this problem, 2 different ways to arrive at the same answer. When we need to do 2 times the entire group 6 plus 3, we can work out the group first, make that 9, and then do 2 times the whole group, 2 times 9, and get 18. Distributive property says that instead of doing order of operations, like we did over there, that to multiply 2 times this entire group, we can get that done by distributing the 2 and multiplying him by each member. So 2 times 6 plus 2 times 3. And notice that it does indeed give us the same answer. Now, distributive property is something you're familiar with. So you have seen that before. Not new to you. Now, one of the things that I should remind you about here is that distributive will also work when you have subtraction. So let's say I have 3 times 10 minus 6. 3 times 10 minus 6. Now again, let's approach this the same way. Let's do this problem first. And I'm going to abbreviate here with order of operations, so OOO. And notice again what this problem says. It wants me to take the number 3 and it wants me to multiply that by the entire group, 10 minus 6. So if I follow the order of operations, it says that I'll do this group first. So I'll do 10 minus 6. 10 minus 6 is 4, so this becomes 3 times 4. And then 3 times 4, we know is 12. So we have a value of 12. Now, I'm going to come over here, same problem. This time, I'm going to do the distributive property. Okay, now what the distributive property says is that if I need to multiply this number 3 by this entire group, 10 minus 6, then I can do that by distributing the 3. I can multiply the 3 by each member of the group individually. So I can do 3 times 10, and I can do 3 times 6, and then put my subtraction sign right there in the middle. So each member of the group gets that 3. Each member of the group gets multiplied by that 3. Now again, following the order of operations, would we do these multiplications first or would we subtract first? Well, order of operations says that multiplications would go before subtraction. So we would do 3 times 10, which is 30. We would do 3 times 6, which is 18. Put our subtraction sign in the middle. 30 minus 18 is 12. So notice, this distributive property also works with subtraction. And what it's doing, notice, is just giving us an alternative way to get to these answers. So we've tried distributive with addition, and it worked. We've tried distributive with subtraction, and it worked. You might be wondering, would it work with multiplication inside the parentheses? So let's try that. Let's try 3 times 4 times 5. So notice what this problem says we're doing. We are taking the number 3 and we are multiplying it by the entire group, 4 times 5. So if I were doing this the order of operations way, we would do our group first. So the very first thing we would do in this problem is the 4 times the 5. 4 times 5 is 20, so this would become 3 times 20. 3 times 20 we know is 60. So if I follow the order of operations, that problem has an answer of 60. Now, let's try it that alternative way. So let's try it this time with the distributive property. Now, notice again here that this problem is saying that we are taking the number 3 and we are multiplying it by the entire group, 4 times 5. Distributive property tells me that I can take the 3 and distribute it to each member of the group. So instead of multiplying the number 3 by the entire group, I can multiply 3 by each member of the group. So I would do 3 times 4, and I would do 3 times 5, and then I would multiply those answers together. And that multiplication symbol comes from right there. Now I'm going to go ahead and put these in parentheses just to kind of emphasize that we're going to multiply 3 by each member of the group first. So 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 5 is 15. I don't believe there's any way that 12 times 15 is going to be 60. As a matter of fact, 12 times 15 is 180. So these are not equal this time. So I want to point out that when there is multiplication inside of your parentheses, the distributive property will not work. So never try to use distributive when your group is a multiplication problem. Inside the parentheses, if there's a plus sign, you can distribute. If there's a minus sign, you can distribute. But if there's multiplication inside your parentheses, you cannot. All right, so only one more operation. We might as well try division and see how that works out for us. All right, so one more problem here. Let's say that I want to do 4 times 10 divided by 2. 4 times 10 divided by 2. Let's do that first with order of operations. So think about what the problem is saying. We want to take the number 4 and we want to multiply it by this entire group. 10 divided by 2. Order of operations would tell us to do the group first, so 10 divided by 2 first. So that would give us 4 times 5. And then 4 times 5 is 20. Same problem. We're multiplying the number 4 by the entire group, 10 divided by 2. This time around, we're going to try this using our distributive property. Okay, so what distributive property tells me to do is it tells me that I don't have to do the group first. That instead of multiplying 4 times the entire group like I did over here, I can do 4 times each member of the group. So I can do 4 times 10 and 4 times 2. 4 times each member. So 4 times 10, 4 times 2, and then the division in the middle. All right, so let's work this out. Would we multiply or divide first? Well, in this case, we want to do these two multiplications. 4 times 10 is 40. 4 times 2 is 8. 40 divided by 8 is 5. Different answers this time. So notice the distributive property will not work when there's division inside of your parentheses. All right, so let's kind of summarize what we've learned here. Okay? We have seen 2 types of problems where distributive property will work. Two types of problems where distributive property will work. So I want to show you what those two problems have looked like. Distributive property will work when I have a number. I'm going to call that number A. So I'm being kind of generic here. And then that number is multiplied by a group that contains an addition problem. So this is one time that distributive property will work. When you have a number like A, and he is being multiplied by an entire group like B plus C. Now I want you to notice this time that I would not, on this problem, the way I have it written, have the option of doing order of operations, because I can't do that group. I have no idea what B plus C is. All right? What distributive property tells me I can do is, instead of multiplying A times the entire group, I can take A and multiply him by each member of my group. So I can do A times B, I can do A times C, and then add the results together. So distributive property tells us that instead of doing the group first and then multiplying by that number that's outside, we can distribute the number that's outside to each member of the group. The A gets multiplied by the B, and the A gets multiplied by the C. Now I could shorten this up, because that dot right there is not really necessary. If I'm doing A times B, I can just write the two beside each other. And likewise over here, when I'm doing A times C with the dot is not necessary. So I can write it without that. So this is one type of problem where distributive will work, when you're multiplying a number times an entire group that contains addition. And distributive tells you to multiply that number that's outside by each member of the group that's inside. Just like in class, if I distributed papers, each member of the class would get a piece of paper. All right, the other type of problem where distributive will work is when we have a number times an entire group that contains subtraction. So if we had A multiplied by the group B minus C, containing subtraction. Distributive property tells me that to get that done, that I can distribute the A, and instead of multiplying A by the group, I can do A times each member of the group. So I would do A times the B, I would do A times the C, and then subtract in the middle. A times B written with a dot, we can shorten up and lose the dot. A times C written with a dot, we can shorten up and lose the dot. So distributive property lets you take a number and multiply it by an entire group by multiplying that number by each member of the group. Okay, now that we know what the distributive property is and what it will let us do, let's take a look at how we're going to use this in algebra. In algebra, you are going to use the distributive property to help you simplify expressions. So we are going to simplify each expression by using the distributive property. Now, what I want to stress here is this word simplify. When we say we are going to simplify something, that means that we are not going to be able to work it all the way out and give a numerical answer. But what we are going to do is attempt to make it simpler than it currently is. So this is going to be a little bit different than anything that we've done so far. All right, so let me give you an example here. Here's the first problem that we'll do. We are going to do 2 times the group x plus 5. So I want you to notice that this problem looks like all of those numerical examples that we have just finished doing. We are being asked to take the number 2 and multiply that number by the entire group x plus 5. So notice on this problem that we wouldn't have the option of doing order of operations because I don't know how to work out this group. I can't figure out what x plus 5 is because I don't know what that x is. So order of operations is not an option for me here. It's not something I could do. So distributive property is the only way that I have of getting this problem done. So I want you to remember what the distributive property says. It says that when you were trying to take a number like 2 and you're trying to multiply it by an entire group like x plus 5, that what you can do is you can distribute the 2 to each member of the group. So I can distribute the 2 to the x, and I can distribute the 2 to the 5. So instead of doing 2 times this entire group, I can do 2 times each member of that group. So here's what I want you to do first on this problem, okay? You'll notice inside of here there's a plus sign. So I want you to come down below this problem and I want you to put that plus sign. So to kind of emphasize this, I'm putting a plus here because there's a plus right here in the middle of my problem. So I'm just moving that down. All right, now I'm going to distribute. So first I'm going to do 2 times x, 2 times x, 2 times that first member of the group. That's going to give me 2x. And then I'm going to do 2 times 5, 2 times that second member of the group. 2 times 5 we know is 10. So we're going to end up with 2x plus 10 as our answer. The 2x came from 2 times x. Couldn't work that out, so I just write it down like it is. And then 2 times 5 gave me the 10. Now, at this point in the problem, we are done. We are done. We cannot add 2x plus 10 because we have no idea what 2x is. We have no idea what 2 times x is. So this would be my final answer. So notice again how we are using that distributive property to do 2 times the entire group x plus 5. We're doing 2 times each member of the group. 2 times x, 2x, 2 times 5, 10. And that plus sign in the middle. All right, let's try another one. All right, so for example 2, we will do 3 times our group 2x plus 4. So 3 times the group 2x plus 4. So this is a job for the distributive property because it asks us to take a number, 3, and multiply it by the entire group 2x plus 4. Now, I'm going to go ahead, since there's a plus sign inside my parentheses, and I'm going to put a plus sign down here for my answer. I'm going to move that down first. All right, now, what the distributive property says I can do is that I can distribute the 3 to each member of my group. So I can do 3 times 2x. 3 times 2x. 3 times that first member of that group. Now, to do 3 times 2x, what you're going to do is 3 times 2, which is 6, and then we'll just reattach that x that we see attached to that 2. So again here, to do 3 times that first member of the group, 3 times 2x, we do 3 times 2, which is 6, and then we just pull that x down and reattach it in our answer. Distributive property says we also need to distribute the 3 to the 4. So we're going to do 3 times the second member of the group. 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 4 is 12. So we end up with 6x plus 12. 6x plus 12. And again, here at that point, we are done because we don't know what 6 times x is. We have no idea how much that is, so we can't add it with the 12. So 6x plus 12 would be your simplified answer. So notice the effect that the distributive property has. It makes the parentheses in the problem go away, which makes it simpler. We have less stuff to look at. Now, you have done this before, so I'm hoping as we go over these examples that this is coming back to you. Now, one of the things that we've learned today is that the distributive property will also work when our group contains subtraction. So in the problem that I have up here now, we are being asked to take the number 5, and we're being asked to multiply that 5 by the entire group, x minus 3. Now, we have a subtraction sign here in our parentheses, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that subtraction sign down and put it here. Distributive property says that if I need to do 5 times this group x minus 3, that I can take that 5 and distribute it to each member of the group. So I can do 5 times the first member. 5 times x is 5x. And then I can do 5 times the second member of the group. 5 times 3 is 15. So 5 times x, 5x, minus 5 times 3, 15. So that number that is outside the parentheses always gets multiplied by every member of the group. It always gets distributed or given to every member of the group. Now 5x minus 15 would be your final answer because again here I can't subtract. I don't know how much 5 times x is, so I can't subtract 15 from it. So I just stop there. So 5x minus 15 would be my answer. Let's do 2 times 9x minus 1. So again, distributive property fits this problem because I'm being asked to take the number 2 and multiply it by the entire group, 9x minus 1. There's a minus sign in my parentheses, so I'm going to go ahead and carry that down here. Put my minus sign in my answer. Distributive property tells me that I can take that 2 and distribute it to each member of my group. So first I will do 2 times 9x. To do that, I'll do 2 times the 9, which is 18. And then because that 9 had an x, carry that x down here and put it in your answer. 2 times 9 is 18. The x moves down, so 2 times 9x is 18x. And then we will also multiply our 2 by the second member of the group. So 2 times 1 is 2. 18x minus 2 is my answer. And again, that's where we will quit. Because I don't know how much 18 times x is, I can't subtract 2 from it. So I leave this exactly where it is. All right, here's another one. In this problem, we're multiplying 5 times the group 4x minus 7. Let me make the suggestion that you pause the video right here, right now. Write this one down on some paper and try it. And when you have an answer then, unpause the video, and I'm going to finish working it, and you can check and see if you have it right. So I'm going to stop talking here just for a second and give you a moment to pause your video. All right, hopefully you've had enough time to complete this problem. Now let's see how you did. The problem in front of you says that you are to multiply the number 5 times the entire group, 4x minus 7, we do see a subtraction sign here, so I'm going to write that down in my answer to get ready. Distributive property tells me to distribute that 5 to each member of the group, to multiply that 5 by each member of my group. So first, you should have done 5 times 4x. 5 times 4x, that's the first member of the group. So the 5 times the 4 should have given you 20. And then we reattach the x that was attached to that 4. So 5 times 4x should have given you 20x. Then we're going to do 5 times the second member of the group. So 5 times 7. 5 times 7 should have given you 35. You have no idea how much 20 times x is, so you can't subtract 35 from it. So that means this should have been your final answer. Hopefully you got that one right. 20x minus 35. We are distributing that number that is outside to each member of the group. Let's do one last one. Let's do 8 times 3x plus 1. 8 times 3x plus 1. Now again, pause the video. Pause the video just for a moment. I'm going to stop talking, give you time to do that, and then unpause it when you have an answer, and I'll work this one, and we'll see how we do. All right, let's see how you did. This problem is asking us to take the number 8 and multiply that number by the entire group, 3x plus 1. Now, plus sign in the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and come down here in my answer and put that plus sign. Now I'm going to take that 8 and distribute him to each member of my group. So each member of the group is going to get multiplied by 8. So we're going to do 8 times 3x first. We do 8 times 3, 24. And then we bring down that x that was attached to the 3 and reattach it here. So 8 times 3x is 24x. Then we'll do 8 times the second member of the group. So 8 times 1 is just an 8. So we end up with 24x plus 8. Again, this would be the final answer because I don't know how much 24 times x is, so I can't add 8 to it. 24x plus 8 is where I would stop. That's as far as I can go. All right, so that is a quick review of the distributive property. We use it when we have a number that is being multiplied by an entire group. Remember that group can only have adding or subtracting in it. And what the distributive property tells you you can do is that you can distribute that number that's outside the parentheses to each member of the group that is inside the parentheses. So that number outside gets multiplied by the first member of the group and by the second member of the group. Everybody gets it. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. You have 12 problems to do today practicing this distributive property. Show your work on paper. Submit your answers as well as a picture of that work. But again, any questions, contact me.